Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here this afternoon to celebrate the life of my mother, Eileen Tate Cline. I am so grateful to all of you, family, friends, and colleagues from near and far, joining us today in person and afar to honor her memory. I also want to thank my husband, Chip, and our twins, Lauren and Lincoln, for their unwavering love and support in helping me through this very difficult year. I want to thank St. Paul's Church for welcoming us here in this beautiful sanctuary, even though we're not regular members. Most importantly, I want to thank my absolutely wonderful Aunt Amy Billingsley, without whom my brother John and I would not have been able to navigate the many challenges following my mother's passing in Colorado last November. I tear up thinking of her truly never wavering patience, calm, and love in the midst of her own great family demands in Virginia. My mother was truly blessed to have the most wonderful sister in the world, who was unfailingly her companion through life and always available to talk at any hour of the night when distance separated them. Since my mother's passed away last November 17th, I have had time to reflect upon all of her best qualities. She loved me and my brother more than life itself. During our youth in Colorado, she parented us with the joy of curiosity and adventure, and the belief that anything was possible, even in a time of racial discord. Our mother brought us up in the Christian Science faith, and we were raised in a church and Sunday school where we were taught that divine love was our father, mother, and protector, and could transcend any seemingly impossible human situation. In short, my mother enabled us to believe that by adhering to the principles of love, we could meet any challenge. Music was my mother's lifelong love, and she passionately believed that music could transcend, uplift, cross barriers, and bring people together of every religion, race, and background. We were surrounded by music all the time as she taught piano 5 days a week in Colorado, had Friday evening potluck musicals at our house, and even started a Boulder children's choir. My brother and I both studied piano and other instruments such as flute, guitar, oboe, and cello. We just thought this was a normal part of life. It never occurred to me how expensive these lessons might be, or that others might not have access to them. It was just that my parents, both teachers, always found a way to support and enable what they felt so deeply important to our upbringing and our soul. In short, my mother's life and mine were relatively free from anxiety or worry because of my mother's unwavering faith in love and forgiveness and the transcendent power of music that enveloped our lives. In reflecting upon my mother's best qualities, the one that I remember most vividly is that she was seemingly fearless. She was widowed unexpectedly when my brother was 17 and I was 16. My father had just started a new job in Princeton, New Jersey, and we had just moved and not even unpacked our bags. But at no point, though, do I remember feeling unbelievably panicked. We would go on to survive multiple moves. My mother enrolled us in boarding school, having pursued and secured quickly full scholarships for both of us. And she returned to graduate school at Indiana University. She was always a phone call away, and at times would drive all night to attend track meets at our boarding school. My brother would go on to attend Stanford University, and I went to the Juilliard School a year later. Though we were living on a shoestring financially, my mother prayed for hours every day and followed the paths that she felt led to take. She just had such a sense that love would provide for us and that God would find a way and show her through deep prayer. The next piece that we're going to perform is one that I have played many times this year with my wonderful colleagues in the Boston Public Quartet. Founder, violinist Betsy Hinkle, and cellist Emmanuel. Be Still and Know is a single movement trio by Carlos Simon Jr. The inspiration of this piece captures the ethos that my mother lived by lovingly and fearlessly. Simon was inspired by a passage in an interview from Oprah Winfrey, which in turn refers to a passage in Psalms 45:10. In the interview, Oprah said, "I have felt the presence of God my whole life. Even when I didn't have a name for it, I could feel the voice bigger than myself speaking to me. And all of us have that same voice. Be still and know it. You can acknowledge it or not. You can worship it or not. You can praise it. You can ignore it, or you can know it. Know it. It's always there, speaking to you and waiting for you to hear it in every move, in every decision. Be still and know."
First of all, I want to thank Joy, Chip, and their wonderful family for organizing this reunion for us. It's a very special reunion in celebration of my sister, Eileen. Eileen was 18 months old when I joined the family, but for the first time in my 87 years, I can't reach up to her by the telephone. But I know she's in a good place, and no doubt she's bossing the angels around. Our mother was a city girl with her 2 brothers and very educated parents. Her father was an architectural engineer with degrees from Harvard and University of Wisconsin. Mother, in addition to being a teacher at our neighborhood elementary school, was also our Brownie, Girl Scout, and church team leader. On the other hand, our father grew up on a small church and a small farm in Arkansas with his 9 brothers and sisters. Both Mom and Dad graduated from University of Chicago at a time when there were not many jobs for Black people. Daddy was a clerk at the U.S. Post Office and also a lively community man. We lived in a small apartment on the south side of Chicago. When World War II ended and financing was available for Black people, our family moved to a house in Morgan Park where we grew vegetables and chickens. Our home was a gathering place for family and friends. Eileen and I went to the neighborhood school from kindergarten to the 8th grade. From a young age, Eileen showed talent in music. I remember when she was 6 years old and visiting family and friends, her music teacher would play a note on the piano. From the other room, Eileen would name that note to the surprise of all of us. With her talent and discipline, she soon excelled in music. After graduating from the 8th grade, she was accepted at the prestigious University of Chicago Lab School. This was her first experience with diverse schoolmates and teachers. Then she went to the University of Chicago College. After 2 years, 17-year-old Eileen was accepted at Oberlin College in Ohio. Shortly after that, our father, to whom Eileen was very close, died from a heart attack at age 45 years old. Somehow, our mother managed to carry out their plans for Eileen to study music and liberal arts at Oberlin. When she was at Oberlin, she met the jovial and talented Bill Cline from Mansfield, Ohio. They married in 1958. They traveled to Colorado for a summer language institute, which turned into 25 years of making Boulder their home. Bill taught languages at Boulder High School. Eileen taught private piano lessons to children and adults. Soon their lives were enriched by the coming of John and Joy. In 1978, Bill Cline was hired by the Educational Testing Service in Princeton, New Jersey as a visiting scholar to help revise the College Board's German exams. But no sooner than they arrived that Bill, who was in his 40s, passed away of a heart attack. That left Eileen, Joy, and John in a new place without a husband, father, or job. What to do? Eileen decided to further her education. Somehow she managed to go to the University of Indiana, where she earned her PhD. She put John and Joy through boarding schools and colleges at Stanford and Juilliard as she worked various administrative jobs, leading to her position as Dean of the renowned Peabody Conservatory of Music in Baltimore. Eileen has left her mark on so many of us. She never met a stranger. With a remarkable memory, she could connect with people through ideas, stories, and activities. The history makers say, every time someone passes, it's like a library being burned down. Fortunately, this amazing woman has poured out her heart in lots of messages, emails, and holiday letters. Plus, her interview with the history makers is online for all to see. Eileen will always be with us, just a thought away. We've been receiving lovely remembrances of her, thanks to all of you who loved her and have been a special part of her life. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mom. Great job. Can we give my mom another round of applause? So as my cousin Joy said, I'm Benita Billingsley Harris. I'm Aunt Eileen's niece, and I've known her all my life. She was tall and beautiful and talented with a brilliant, shining smile, very similar to my cousin Joy. And we adored her. We were talking this morning at breakfast about our favorite ways to go to sleep, the family and I. And I thought it was an interesting conversation because the body likes to go to sleep the way it's used to going to sleep. So our daughters and granddaughter, they like to go to sleep to the sounds of music or rain or nature sounds. My husband, often ESPN, puts him to sleep. Me and Aunt Eileen started a different tradition because we were avid Scrabble players. And so once we learned how to play Words with Friends virtually, that was our nighttime ritual. And something about stopping to think about what word I wanted to play just took away the pressures of the world and made me think and relax and go to sleep. Just a week before she passed, Aunt Eileen was beating me at Words with Friends, as usual. I was looking today to see what the stats are, and I thought it was interesting. My average game score was 359 points. Hers was 424 points. My all-time wins were 534. Hers were 561. My highest game score was 571. Hers was 630. Head-to-head, I managed to beat her 21 times. She beat me 34 times. My largest winning streak was 2 games. Hers was 8. So I just thought that just an idea of how remarkable she was, all the way to the end. Many of my favorite memories about her were, as a child, spending summers in Boulder, Colorado. First of all, Uncle Bill, Aunt Eileen, Joy, and John, and Tasha, the lovable basset hound, had a beautiful home in Boulder. It was I remember it being like a circular home, and when you walk in the first gate, there was like a patio that circled the home. It was beautiful. And there was this huge pond on the left side when you walked in with all kinds of species of frogs. Because my cousin John was into frogs, and Aunt Eileen and Uncle Bill wanted to make sure he got to study what he loved. And he could tell you everything about every species of frog, and they were right there in the house. My sister and I also got piano lessons when we visited Aunt Eileen in the summer. We learned how to square dance, we learned how to ski, and we learned how to hike. Now, mind you, we're city girls from Washington, D.C. We didn't know how to, all of that was foreign to us, but because of her, I can say I've had that experience. One time, Aunt Eileen took us up the top of a mountain, huffing and puffing. We had our canteen with water, our backpack with supplies. I mean, we thought it was like torture, city girls. We got all the way to the top of the mountain to see this flower that she said was a big deal because it only blooms once every 20 years, something like that. So I will never forget the time we hiked to the top of the mountain because Aunt Eileen wanted us to see this flower. It was just an example of the importance that she taught us of respecting beauty and nature. That was Aunt Eileen and the environment. My husband got a dose of it years later when we were married. We were at her house and we saw these wriggling things in the corner of a closet on the way to the backyard. And there was like 5 baby snakes in the corner, just wriggling away. So we're like, oh my gosh, Cadillac, get it. So my husband grew up on a farm in Virginia where his philosophy was the only good snake is a dead snake. So he's like, okay, y'all want me to get it? And he gets a tissue and he's like, okay, I'll kill it for you. And Aunt Eileen's like, no, don't kill them, they're babies. So she went and got a paper towel and she picked up those snakes and carried them outside while my husband just stood and shook his head. But she rescued those snakes. I think about her generosity and the joy of Labor Day musicals many of us experienced at her home, including our oldest daughter, Courtney, when she was a fledgling violist in middle school. Everyone had the gracious and patience to let her play with them. Oh, Christmas was a wonderful time when Aunt Eileen was around because Christmas carols, I know so many Christmas carols now, and I love caroling because of her. She would just sit down at the piano and start playing beautiful Christmas songs, and we all got to enjoy Christmas caroling because of her. I think about the pride I felt when she became the first African-American dean of Peabody Conservatory in Baltimore, where we had continued piano lessons, because we were living in Baltimore at the time, and now she was there. Unfortunately, despite her best efforts, my sister and I did not quite rise to the musical genius of her and Joy, and my cousin John played the oboe. But I'm grateful so many of you all did share that passion and talent for music, and I'm grateful that we are on the music appreciation side. You all need us too, right? I'm also grateful that Aunt Eileen gave me her wedding dress. That was the first decision of my wedding. She let me borrow her dress, and I was amazed because I'm 5'3". I don't know how tall she is, almost 6 feet, but the dress fit me perfectly. We just had to hem it a little bit. And of course, she was there for our wedding with Lauren and Lincoln in their twin stroller, about 3 months old. You guys were so cute. In her older years, Aunt Eileen, the climber of literal and figurative mountains, she slowed down physically, which was painful and frustrating for her. But her mind was as sharp as ever. We loved her wit, the time she took to listen to our problems, the calls she made to encourage my daughters in college. And the quality time we had together during her visits to Virginia. We used to get a beach house in the summers, and she, Lauren and Lincoln, especially Lincoln, would come down, and we would enjoy the ocean and nature together. We're grateful that she hosted us last summer in Colorado, where we had quality time with her, and the girls got to see the mountains for the first time. It was a very special trip, and it's one we think about often because that was the last time that we saw her. So thank you so much to all of you for being a special part of her life and for loving my Aunt Eileen. Thank you.
Thank you, Benita. That was beautiful. Thank you. Next, we're going to have Linda Cutting. And Linda is now an acclaimed author, pianist, but studied piano with my mother in Colorado, I think when you were 13. Anyway, our friendship goes way back, and we're just very grateful for her friendship. So she'll speak next.
Well, it's such an honor to be here to speak about Dr. Eileen Tate Cline. Thank you, Joy, for that privilege. In the over 50 years that I was blessed to know Eileen, we only had one argument, but it lasted the length of our relationship. When I saw her in Colorado 2 years ago, it turned out to be my last time, we were still arguing and laughing about it. I've always remembered first meeting Eileen when she came from Colorado University in Boulder to Cheyenne, Wyoming, where I lived, to judge a piano competition. I was 13. Eileen always claimed I was 16 when we met, and she never budged from that claim. It's a part of our beloved Eileen that I'm sure you all know to some degree or another. When Eileen thought she was right, she didn't bend like a willow. She stood fast like an oak. The reason that argument was such a recurring one was simple. If Eileen had been right and I was 16, not 13 when we met, that would have meant 3 fewer years of Eileen in my life. But honestly, Eileen always seemed to exist outside of time, in the same way she got those of us who were lucky enough to study with her to bend time. It was time that was bent in accordance with what the composer intended, she always told us. I never questioned her on that because she seemed to always inhabit the same space-time continuum as the music she was teaching. I was lucky enough to study with Eileen between college and grad school while working on Beethoven's Emperor Concerto for a competition at the Aspen Music School. Unlike any piano teacher I'd had to that point, Eileen didn't tell me what to do. She asked me what I thought Beethoven wanted from me. I said, "You mean besides hours of practice?" That easy melodic laugh of hers erupted. Then she asked, "What do you think the meaning of this phrase is?" Meaning? No one had ever asked me such a question. I had no idea. "I'm not sure," I said. "Well, don't you think it's something you should think about while you practice?" But it wasn't just thinking about music that mattered to Eileen. Over the life of our long relationship, Eileen continued to challenge me, not only to think, but to help break down racial barriers and envision a utopia where color lines were no longer drawn. In the year 2000, with Eileen's help, I put together a concert and symposium at the Laundry School of Music of Bard College. It was titled Classical Music in Black and White. Joy performed on the piano, Owen Young on the cello, Ann Hobson Pilot on harp, and Robert Honeysucker sang. Other well-known Boston musicians who were white also joined us for the concert. Eileen, then Dean of Peabody Conservatory, led the pre-concert discussion. She asked probing questions about how each Black musician had faced down prejudice in the classical music world. For me, it was a master class in learning what I'd never really known of my friends, how often they had to struggle against ridiculous presumptions made based on the color of their skin, not their talent. But Eileen never let the story end there. She also asked each of them what had been most fulfilling for them as musicians, not as musicians who were Black, but simply as musicians. It was Eileen's utopian dream that music would bring together musicians of every race, every economic sector, in every part of the world. I'm sure those of you who know her well know that she was quite a folk dancer to music around the world. I will never forget the pleasure of living with Eileen and Joy for one summer at the Aspen Music School before I headed east for grad school at New England Conservatory. Suddenly, Eileen had morphed from the tall, statuesque woman who carried herself with such calm authority when I first met her, to an amazing piano teacher who was exactly the one I needed at the time, to an incredible mom. I not only admired her relationship with Joy, I envied it. I loved watching Eileen and Joy share their love for each other, so evident in the everyday tasks of living. but also the way they shared a devotion to music that was serious and deep. Although it's been almost 10 months since Eileen left our world, I believe the light of her life continues in all of us who knew her, loved her, and were loved by her. It continues in today's celebration of Eileen's life, which includes the many years of chamber music concerts she hosted at her home in Baltimore. It's a tradition which Joy has worked hard to bring us today. It's a small part of Eileen's enormous legacy, which will outlive her through generations. Dear Eileen, thank you for all the love and wisdom you've shared in such abundance. It's a gift we all cherish, and today we are loving you right back.
Thank you, Linda. That was just beautiful. Next, we're going to have two movements of a Bach cello suite. And my mother, part of her morning routine would be to pray and to listen to Bach. And she just felt those two things went together. And one of her favorites to listen to was Pablo Casal's The Six Bach Cello Suites. So I have my wonderful colleague here, Emmanuel Feldman, who's going to play two movements of Suite number 3 in C major.
Just wanted to say very briefly that in the last few years, I was very privileged to be able to have some conversations with Eileen on the telephone and just speaking about all sorts of things. And she was a very deep thinker and very supportive of the collaboration I have with Joy over so many years. And one thing I did want to say is she loved Bach, and I'm very happy to play it for you today.
Thank you, Emmanuel. That was just beautiful. My mother is smiling in heaven. Next, we're going to have Amadi Azikiwe. And Amadi is a fantastic violist, just fantastic person. I like to think of him as my brother from another mother. and I'm just so grateful he's able to be with us today. When my mother started having her Labor Day chamber music parties, Amadi was instrumental, forgive the pun, instrumental in making them work, because he would call various musician friends and just always was such a wonderful presence, not only playing, but just friend, wonderful colleague, wonderful person. I can't say enough wonderful things about Amadi. So he's up next to talk. Thank you, Amadi.
Thank you, Joy. Wow. I'm just full of gratitude for having known Aunt Eileen. Is there a relative between aunt and mom? If there is, she was it, and she let me know pretty soon that she considered me a part of the family. And over the years, I've just become more and more grateful for the safe space that she created for me and so many others. If it was just a phone call, an encouraging word, some advice not even directed towards me, but that I heard her talking with somebody else. So I feel like I'm continuing to learn from Eileen. And in New York City, where I live now, I make it a point to host my own chamber music parties, and I always give credit to Eileen, because what a wonderful thing to bring people together in celebration of music. My mom met Eileen before I did, and I think it was in Winston-Salem, and I want to say it was at a teacher's conference. And even though Joy and I started playing together when I was at New England Conservatory, Eileen arranged a lesson for me with Earl Carless, who at the time was, I think he had just stopped being second violinist of the Juilliard Quartet, but still was at Peabody. So I think that's when I first met Eileen. And from that moment, it was nothing short of completely supportive, just an extraordinary relationship and existence. And I remember every time I stayed at y'all's home, I would always sleep on the red beanbag. Y'all know the big, huge beanbag? There were two of them. She'd like, don't you want to sleep in one of the guest rooms? I'm like, no, I'm good. I'll take the beanbag. Oh, well, I'm so deeply honored to be here, and I will always give thanks for having known Eileen and remaining part of the family. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amadi. That was beautiful. Next, we're going to have Robert Wyrick and his lovely wife, Karen Kushner. And Robert Wyrick was formerly, sorry, I'm going to just check my program. Oh my goodness. Okay, my bad. Sorry. Okay, next we have dear friends from Colorado. We have Reed Bailey and Carol Saunders. And I knew their daughter, Theone, back when we were in, I believe, second grade, third grade. And we used to skateboard all around Boulder, Colorado, which is kind of funny thinking about. But anyway, Theone was like one of my most fearless friends, and I just kind of followed right along. And anyway, her parents became dear friends of my mother when she moved back to Colorado. And I think of them as angels that have already won their wings because my mother would call on them all the time, and they would so patiently come to her rescue, whether it was installing a ring. I remember when Reed came over and he installed a ring security, and my mom called me so excited, like, Joy, you should see this, that Reed. And then I'm trying to think what else Reed installed. Anyway, she called me again, and I was thinking, wow, this is a really good friend that she's... Anyway, they just were there for my mother, and I'm just so grateful. And they just, were very patient, and sometimes she, needed something from the store. And anyway, I'm just tearing up thinking about it because I just... They're angels already that just kind of met my mother's need right there in Colorado when we couldn't be there, and often without any warning, just, Anyway, I just want to thank them for loving my mom. So they're going to speak next, and they've come all the way from Colorado. Thank you.
I think Reed is going to talk too. It's been all over for you, Reed. Where are you? Oh, I'm Carol Saunders. And while I've been listening to everyone, I keep thinking, I just want to say, hi, Eileen. We're here. Hi. I became friends with Eileen through our children, as Joy just said. And because Joy and Theone were closer in age, and Lance and John were not so close, but we all still, as families, would get together, in the soirees especially, and the kids would go off doing crazy things like using the telephone to make tunes and call people. I wasn't sure that that actually happened. But those are some of the things I remember. I wanted to tell you a little bit about this. I think that one of the musical connections was with the OWN and the Children's Choir, and also a short stint of piano lessons for her. And Eileen and Bill's all-inclusive musical soirees, of course, as I said, included everybody, and just kind of wove our long-term, 50 years really, friendship, because it started before Joy was talking about the return to Colorado. Dear Eileen had a many-faceted personality, and as we all know, she was quite athletic. Half a century ago in Boulder, Colorado, we both were members of the Colorado Mountain Club. And we both took the mountaineering school training and became rock climbers. And I should say it delighted Eileen to see Lincoln climb a short rope of, that was about 5 years ago, maybe? Up a short distance, and she was delighted that he would do that without any question, just up and go for it. And we were part of the folk dance group that enlivened the whole memorial center at the university. And as someone else, is it Linda mentioned, her tall, lithe, graceful figure in those wonderful dances that I could never quite remember all those steps, and she never hesitated. Within the past 15 years or so, we cycled, she on her tricycle sometimes, which I found very tippy, but she didn't seem to mind that. And then later, the last few years, on a stationary bike in her office. And as that became harder for her to do, we agreed on my dad's aphorism, "The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." And as she aged, Eileen was quick to make use of skills of my husband, Reed. He is an easy conversationalist and happy to solve any problems. do that now.
Well, I am the Johnny come lately, but I want you to know, Carol and I have been together 42 years, and she always talked about Eileen. And then we get these fantastic Christmas letters, and they were so articulate and educated. I essentially placed Eileen way up here, both intellectually and musically. I have some musical ability. I still sing in a choir, but that's about it. And so I didn't get to meet Eileen until about, we think, 2008, because she purchased a house not far from us. And I remember early on that she had a brilliant mind, and we just loved to, I like to talk, so we did have lots of chats. And we got into this routine where I had 3 jobs. These were all volunteer jobs. Number one, when you may not know this, but she loved her house. Wherever she lived, she wanted to make it welcoming and keep it in good shape, make sure it's finished. So my first job was when she needed new air conditioning and a furnace. I consulted with her and advised, and she was good with that. My second job, as you've heard, was minor repairs, including installing a ring doorbell for her, which was really necessary because she insisted on sleeping on the second level. And my third job was ice cream runs. And embedded in all of the 3 jobs was, I need to talk to somebody. Okay, so you knew if you're going to go deliver ice cream, you were going to chat for a while, which is okay with me. But I'll just tell you two incidents around her. Well, first I wanted to say, it was clear to me she was a very strong matriarch, and she knew exactly how her children and grandchildren should live their lives. And she would tell them. And so there were times, like, I wanted her to get an electric chair to go up the stairs. She insisted on being up there. And so she called me and she says, well, I think I'm going to get an electric chair. It's about $9,000. And so I made while I was talking to her, did some Google searches. I said, I can get you that same chair for $4,000. Same chair, I'd already talked to the company. And then she decided, I guess I don't want the chair. A little frustrated because we were all concerned she was going to fall down those stairs. But then a year ago, this was in 2022, she was going to go back, I think, to Baltimore, be with Amy. Amy and I see each other on Facebook. And so we were going to get up at 5:45 in the morning. I wanted to take her to the airport, but she insisted. She can be quite stubborn. She insisted to take the bus. And so the agreement was it was about 3 days before Thanksgiving. It was going to be a family reunion. And so in any case, but at 5:45 in the morning, we get a call. I think it was Sunday or Monday before Thanksgiving. She decided not to go. Okay, I'm going to go. But then, I think I probably texted Joanne, says, your mother's not coming. But then it couldn't have been more than, and maybe it was Tuesday or Wednesday before Thanksgiving. At 5:45 in the morning, I get this call. Reed, pick me up. I'm going to. Okay, I rolled out of bed. And essentially drove over there. And again, she wouldn't let me take her to the airport. I'm taking that bus. Okay. So I put her on the bus, and away she went. But that was Eileen. And I miss her. It's really an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting us. We enjoyed. I'll miss Eileen. I do miss the ice cream because I would always have some with her. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reed and Carol. And I also want to thank some other Colorado friends who are joining us online, who also my mother would call and they would come to just help her whenever. I would like to thank Greg Walker and Lori Walker, who are angels also, and Linda Geidel, and Dave Fortner, Dave Scherer, the entire Scherer family. My mother was just so blessed to be surrounded with love by these people, friends in Colorado, who, would often come just, and my mom would call and they would come. So thank you so much with all my heart. Next, we're going to have Robert Wyrick and Karen Kushner. And Robert Wyrick was formerly on the faculty of Peabody, a wonderful pianist, and founded the Scaniatalist Music Festival and is now an author. And his wife, Karen, I actually went to Juilliard with, so I'm so honored to have them here today. And they are going to both talk and play for us.
I'm not going to talk. He's going to talk.
And it's very intimidating to follow such good speakers that we've had already. I would love to have Amadi's voice quality, wouldn't you? Yeah. Joy, we are indeed honored to be part of this celebration, and Eileen did mean a great deal to both of us. I'm amazed to think that my relationship with her has gone back about 40 years. And over that much time, it's a bond that grew and developed in ways I would not have expected when we first met. As you know, she was Dean of Peabody, and she was instrumental in hiring me to be on the piano faculty in 1985. I was not the likeliest candidate for the job, being only 35, and the other two candidates were much better known than I. And so I have the feeling, though, that she had something to do with, maybe a lot to do with, my hiring. She was always willing, as we've heard, to take chances on people. After her retirement from the Baltimore area, she moved back to Colorado and lived in a townhouse in Louisville between Denver and Boulder. However, with both John and Joy on the East Coast, she thought nothing of driving her Volkswagen bus across country to see them. That's a 29-hour drive, according to Google Maps, 1,975 miles. And in case it never occurred to you, she was one determined, resilient woman. She often stopped at our house in Kansas City, a mere 600 miles from Denver, for overnights. Those times together taught me many things about her I didn't know when I was a Peabody faculty member. For example, in those days, she always seemed very assured and in control, but she had to be a determined, resilient person to be the Peabody Dean. Peabody was something of a mess in those days, on the brink of going broke, a faculty that was the proverbial herd of cats, and a do-or-die relationship with Johns Hopkins, a well-endowed university that was much more interested in its sciences and medical programs. Also, she was not in charge, as the dean title suggests. She answered to the director of the institute, at that time a former horn player from the Baltimore Symphony. I didn't really know Bob Pierce, but I later learned that Eileen's relationship with him was not the easiest. She persevered nonetheless. One of her core principles made a lot of sense to me. It was the idea of the critical mass. You may know of the definition in nuclear fission, but it's also true in any human interaction. A critical mass is the minimum amount of something required to create or maintain a venture. Eileen wanted to create a musical environment at Peabody that invited everyone to be authentic to themselves and to the music, a wholehearted dedication to beauty and honesty. The critical mass would be achieved when there were enough people at Peabody who valued this so much that their spirit would outweigh the naysayers, the negative perfectionists who loudly proclaim their correctness. In this, I think she was ahead of her time. It's very hard for any organization to achieve this kind of selflessness. That she tried at all gave many people, including me, the sense that good things were indeed possible. Her underlying center, as you've heard today, was that she loved music. She listened deeply, deeply to music. I remember how she would get rhapsodic over William Masellis's recording of Schumann's Davidsbündler Tänze. In fact, when I first arrived in Baltimore, she invited me to her apartment for dinner and played that recording for me. This was in sharp contrast to my previous dean, who had never even talked about music. She was a real devotee of music and making music. I was recently in touch with a former Peabody student of mine named Maxwell Brown, who grew up in New Haven and studied as a teenager at the neighborhood music school where Eileen was director. Here is what he told me by email. She gave me some pointers on the Bach prelude I was playing, but what I most remember was that I sat next to her as she played the Mozart D minor Fantasy. She made up a story and narrated it as she played, fitting to the music. I remember being amazed at how her story fit perfectly with every musical gesture. That indeed is a real teacher and a real musician. She was also a real devotee of the people she chose to be close to. Anyone she considered part of that critical mass received her complete support. I remember some conversations with her during my years on the faculty that helped me make some difficult decisions in life, even though it led to my leaving Peabody. She was willing to go out on a limb to help people. At another time, she found a way to get me 2 partial leaves of absence from teaching so that I could pursue some performance opportunities. Peabody did not have a sabbatical program, so this was way beyond the call of duty on her part. I saw her do the same thing for many Peabody students. She wanted all of them to become complete human beings. She helped them find financial support or gain introductions to people who could help them. She spent many late nights in her office reading their performance reviews or writing recommendations for their summer festival applications. And as you've heard today, her parties for students at her home, chamber music into the wee hours, were legend. We'll have a reenactment of that in a little while. My last year on the faculty was 1995. She had by that time moved into the Johns Hopkins administration and retired then in 1999. By this time, I was in Kansas City. I had arranged to rendezvous with this lady standing next to me at that party for Eileen in her retirement. Of particular importance, Karen met Eileen for the first time at that in 1999. Of particular importance to me was that I proposed to Karen that weekend. We've been together ever since. To honor Eileen and to honor relationships and love, we will play selections from the Liebeslieder waltzes by Johannes Brahms. These love songs are scored for vocal quartet and piano for hands, but the duet parts stand on their own. We'll play about 5 of them if you're counting. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob and Karen. That was just beautiful. Thank you. We're now at our last speaker before our final music selection. And Anne-Marie Soulier met my mother, is it 40 years ago? 40 years ago. And as of more recent, they were board members of the Marlborough Music Festival. And I'm so honored that she is here to speak last today in honor of my mother. Thank you.
I think I'm the shortest one. Family, friends, it's my deep privilege today to conclude our spoken invitational remembrances of our very dear Eileen. Our friendship began in the late 1970s in New Haven, where Eileen led the neighborhood music school in her completely dedicated and inspired way. We were frequently together at Yale musical events and in each other's homes. Our friendship continued throughout the years, the last 20 as we served together on the Marlborough Chamber Music Festival board. Eileen was a greatly gifted woman who led an extraordinary life and had an extraordinary effect on others. Her family, her friends, her students, and the greater music world at large. Her presence was a blessing to each of us. She was insightful, humane, unfailingly gracious, and determined. As an artist, educator, and musical public intellectual, as well as everyone's big sister, she analyzed, criticized, instigated, cajoled, and inspired with her ideas, her compassion, and her constancy. There was never a more generous spirit. She was also, as we heard from Bob and Karen, a road warrior, crossing the country repeatedly in her VW van. She appeared whenever and wherever she was needed, and threw her immense energy into every task. The mind boggled at the mileage and the stamina. At Marlborough, she was deeply valued for her musical talent and experience, and also for telling it like it is, inspiring reflection on the past, and sharing her passion for the essential and glorious future of chamber music. Music has taught us all about the Farewell Symphony. Many of us have, one by one, lost our teachers, our mentors, and dear friends. Yet there is daily joy in their many personal gifts to us and to our experiences in life. Eileen stands out among my own treasured friends and associates, a very bright light whose memory will always accompany me in the coming years. Thank you, Eileen, for so many stimulating and inspiring encounters and for being your extraordinary self every day. You are already very deeply missed and very gratefully remembered by all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anne-Marie. Thank you. In closing, before our last piece, I would like to read an email that Carolyn Tucker sent from California. I'm so honored that her daughter, Allison Tucker, and granddaughter, Maddie Tucker, are here with us today, came from California. And I always think of the Tuckers as my California family. And I kind of joke that I just decided they were such a wonderful family that I just wanted them to be my family. And I think staying at their house, which they graciously let me stay there, I think for my brother's graduation from Stanford, I just kind of announced, can I be a part of this family? And I think Allison's parents, were stunned for a moment, but they went, sure. And they have really been my California family ever since. And I'd love to read an email that Carolyn wrote with the help of Hamish, of her oldest son. And she says, I've been thinking of your wonderful mother almost every day since her passing. She meant so much to me, and of course to Tony, and we valued our decades-long friendship with her very much. As I think of her, two of her beautiful qualities stand out. First was her unwavering commitment to Christian values, love, compassion, strength in her sense of right, and faith in the good. Second, her remarkable ability to connect with young people. I witnessed that at the warm and delightful Thanksgiving gathering she hosted in Maryland with scores of young musicians, so obviously at home and at ease in her presence. Several of them, including Awadaj Pratt, talked about it explicitly. I heard it when your mom described to us her work as dean. It benefited my own family many times, like when she dug up her old notes on the Goldberg variations when Hamish revised his interest in playing Bach, and when she made Allison a regular Thanksgiving guest during her years in DC. It meant a lot to me and Tony that your mother, in so many words, designated us as a home away from home for you, John, when you came to Stanford. We tried to be your Palo Alto family, and we always felt that way towards both of you. I remember getting the splendid news from Hamish in Cambridge in 1989 when he told us he was moving in with you, Joy, and he still tells funny roommate stories from your time together. So anyway, I'm just so grateful that they could be here today and that they've just shared their lives with me, with my brother, with my mother. And to close, my mother described in her last 5 wishes that she wanted the Mendelssohn Octet, which was always played at her Labor Day parties in Maryland, annual Labor Day parties. And I'm so grateful that the musicians that she described are here today, and they've come, many of them from far. We have some from the Chicago Symphony, from the New York Philharmonic, and I tear up just thinking that they've come all this way to make my mother's dream a reality. So next we're going to have just the first movement of the Mendelssohn Octet, and it'll just take us a moment to set up.
Thank you.